ナモ阿弥陀仏、ナモ阿弥陀仏、ナモ阿弥陀仏、ナマンダー、ナマンダー、ナマンダー、ナマンダー。
Amida. Let's put our hands together in Gassho. Have compassion for all beings, rich and poor alike. Each has their own suffering. Some suffer too much, others too little. Teach this triple truth to all. A generous heart, kind speech, and the life of service and compassion are the things that renew humanity. Of the saying of Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Good morning and welcome. Thank you for coming to this morning Sunday service. This is also the last Sunday of this month of August 2021. And depending on how we view it, it's either good that half of the year is already pau, and most of us are relatively well and healthy. But unfortunately, we're not out of the woods yet because COVID-19 is making a comeback with the newer Delta and Lambda strains of the virus, and we just cannot let our guard down yet. Recent world events have not been what we hoped they would be. The pandemic is still going on. The Earth, after many years of us polluting it, is beginning to show the effects of global warming. And of course, violent events around the world, most recently in Afghanistan. The events that happened there a few weeks ago were eerily similar to the end of the Vietnam War in 1975 with the fall of Saigon. Reading the news online, I experienced what's called a flashback. What is a flashback? A flashback, by definition, is a psychological phenomenon in which an individual has a sudden, usually powerful remembering of a past experience or elements of a past experience. These experiences can be happy, sad, exciting, or any other emotion one can consider. Before I continue, I want to let you know that a flashback is not something like a hallucination. You don't see anything physical with your eyes, but rather it's all memory. When I had one such flashback several days ago, I was looking at the photos of the ongoing events in Afghanistan and those trying to leave the country through the airport. The pictures that triggered the flashback were photos of people with bloody faces as a result of the chaos and violence happening there now. When I looked at one picture, I said to myself, hey, something's familiar with this picture. Where have I seen this kind of bloodied face before? Without much effort trying to recall, it just suddenly came to me that this was like the incident I witnessed way back in the late 1960s. It was early summer of 1969, and it was one hot afternoon during the summer school break. I was in 5th grade at that time. I was outside our house playing sandlot basketball with my friends, when suddenly we heard a commotion, angry voices, shouting, and we looked in the direction where the voices were coming from. There was this crowd coming down the streets, and in the forefront was a man with his shirt torn to shreds and blood flowing down his face. His arms were held in a tight lock by some other men behind and kicking him in the rear, occasionally punching him in the head too. People were shouting angry words at him, and someone even threw dirt at his already severely wounded face. I asked one of the old boys in the crowd around the man, what's happening? Who is this guy? He doesn't look familiar to me, so he must be someone not from this part of our village. The older boy replied, yes, he's not from our side of the village. He was caught trying to break into a house to steal something. He thought the owner or the house was empty, but the owner was there and alerted other people in the vicinity. He was apprehended right away by the men of the neighborhood watch group. So he was a would-be burglar. My thoughts at that time was, he did a bad thing. He deserves what he's getting now. But the one thing that stuck in my mind is his scared and agonized, bloodied face, and how he was begging for mercy from the crowd that continued to hurt him. He said something like, "Please forgive me. I was only trying to feed my wife and small children." Of course, any would-be burglar caught red-handed would say anything in an attempt to lessen the gravity or severity of his punishment. But judging from the man's age, based on his appearance and the time of the incident, he could very well be telling the truth. He looked to be in his 20s, an age of a father when his kids are still very young and dependent on him. And most experienced burglars would do their burglarizing at night, not in broad daylight. Daytime break-ins are usually carried out by someone desperate enough to risk easy capture. The sad economic situation in the Philippines, where jobs are hard to find and pay is low, only makes it likely that he was telling the truth. He had no job and unable to support his family at that time. Anyway, why was he paraded in the streets? One of the men restraining him said that it was to show the village what happens to people who commit such acts, as a warning and an example. The crowd then moved on, and I never heard what happened to that man again. This was the flashback that came to me, a distant memory of an event that happened over 50 years ago, that came back as if I saw it again on TV. Same images vividly shown in my mind, but with a big difference. When I recall that incident in 1969, I now feel a sense of sadness and shame, even guilt, at how the people of my village treated the captured man. He was a burglar, all right. He tried to break into someone's house. Nobody believed his excuses or reasons for doing his criminal act. But regardless of whether he did it out of desperation to feed his family or for his own greed, there was no need to give him such kind of punishment. He was already caught, restrained, prevented from moving any further, yet the crowd felt entitled at that time to administer the punishment too, and in a violent way at that. The people became judge, jury, and executioner in this incident. What was sadly missing here was understanding and compassion. It was a case of frontier or Wild West justice. I am not trying to blame the religion the people there follow, but this is what happens when the concept of good and evil is seen with a dualistic mind. The dualistic mind thinks like this: the man tried to steal, he is evil. We, those people who think who caught him, prevented someone's property from being stolen. So therefore, we are the good guys. Really? We are that good that we're not capable of doing the same thing in desperate times? The Buddhist way of seeing this is with a compassionate heart, to look at the act of attempting to steal as evil, not the person himself. That what he did was bad does not necessarily mean that his nature is bad too. In the other religious traditions, good is obeying the commandments of a god or other deities, and evil is the opposite, created by beings who disobey the commandments. In Buddhism, evil is a result of ignorance, of not knowing the consequences of one's action, not understanding completely the law of cause and effect. Good is the result of wholesome action done with wisdom. With the Buddha's teaching as a guide, a person obtains the wisdom to see and walk the path that brings happiness to himself and others, and avoid the way of evil that brings suffering and sorrow. It is amazing that an incident that happened so many years ago in my life and had been very deep in my consciousness was suddenly brought back by seeing pictures of violence happening today in a distant part of the world. I can now never forget that man's bloodied face and his plea for mercy from those people beating him mindlessly. If it was true that he did it out of despair to feed his family, then it makes it even sadder to think that he was probably locked up in jail, unable to do anything now to save his family from starvation. I wonder myself, what if that person were me? Would I do the same thing? If nothing else is possible, if I had done my best and exhausted all means and still not able to give even the most basic meal for my family, then yes, I would commit the same kind of crime as a last desperate effort or resort. So now here, in this situation, through the wisdom eye of Buddhism, we can see that the duality of good and evil does not exist. If a man commits a bad deed as a last desperate act to feed his family, the act itself cannot be called all bad. The act of stealing is an evil act for the victim who loses his property. But for the hungry wife and children of the burglar, it is an act that can relieve them of the discomfort of hunger and sustain their lives. The father who tried to steal was actually showing his love and concern for his family, but at the expense of another person, his victim. And even if he committed the crime for his own selfish reason and not to feed his family, to use violence on him after he had already been captured is never justified. By no means are the people in our village or the Philippines in general heartless and devoid of compassion. But on that day, they displayed their worst human traits. It was a very interesting flashback I experienced. The many lessons in life that were presented to me that one hot summer day in 1969 only sank in 52 years later. The Dharma, the teaching, or life itself is timeless. What was true then will remain true. Compassion for all beings, even to those who have offended us, is a fundamental requirement for a Buddhist. I hope that man and his family survived the difficult times and are now living at least a decent life in a country that has remained one of the poorest in Asia. One last moment, a comment. Where was our village policeman while all this was happening at that time? The nearest police station was about 1.5 miles away. And in late 1969, it was probably just 1 or 2 squad cars servicing the district where our village belonged. There were no cell phones back then yet, no public phones, and very few had phones in their homes. Most likely someone went on foot and found nobody at the police station. There is an old joke in the Philippines, which is said even today, that goes, if you're in real trouble or danger and you need a policeman, don't go to the police station to look for one. They're not there. Go to the bars or any drinking establishments, and there you'll find them plenty. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Namo no, Namo no, Namo. Namo no, Namo no.